everyone, I'm Mayos Kilang. We will discuss the annotation of Antonio Morgas' Sucesos de las Islas, Filipinas.
Let us define what is Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. It is one of the most important works on the early history of the Spanish colonization of the Philippines, published in Mexico in 1609. It narrates the history of wars, intrigues, diplomacy, and evangelization of the Philippines in somewhat disjointed way. And it annotated by Rizal with a prologue by Dr. Ferdinand Blumentritt. The annotation of Rizal consisted of 8 chapters, in which the first 7 chapters tells with the events of the first 11 Governor-General of the Philippines, starts in from Legazpi to Ocaña. The last chapter focused on customs and it described the Indios during the Spanish era. So, who wrote the book Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas? Well, the book was written by a Spaniard named Antonio de Morga. Who is Antonio de Morga? Dr. Antonio de Morga was a Spanish historian, a lawyer, and a notable colonial officer for 43 years in the Philippines, New Spain, and Peru. He stayed in the Philippines, then a colony of Spain from 1594 to 1604. As a deputy governor in the Philippines, he reestablished the audiencia and took over the function of a judge. A real audiencia, or simply an audiencia, was an appellate court in Spain and its empire. The name of the institution literally translates as Royal Audience. He also wrote the first lay formal history of the Philippines conquest by Spain. What leads Jose Rizal to Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas? First, Rizal was an earnest seeker of truth and this marked him as a historian. Next is he had a burning desire to know exactly the conditions of the Philippines when the Spaniard came ashore to the islands. And his theory was that the country was economically self-sufficient and prosperous. And he believed that the conquest of the Spaniard contributed in part to the decline of the Philippines' rich tradition and culture. Rizal's first consideration for the choice of Morga. 1. The original book was rare. 2. Morga is a layman, not a religious chronicler. 3. Rizal felt Morga to be more objective than the religious writers who included many miracle stories. Rizal spent 4 months for research and writing and almost a year to have his manuscript printed with Ferdinand Blumentritt and was published in Paris in January 1890. 2 categories in Rizal's annotation. First is Rizal's correct, the original one, the straightforward historical annotation. Second is historical base reflect his anti-clerical bias. And now, let's go to Rizal and Morga's different views about the Filipinos and Philippine culture. Geography. Location. According to Morga, the Philippines was inhabitable. Rizal said Ptolemy in his geography indicated 3 islands which are Sinoday, Gilulo, Amboyna and their inhabitants, thus Philippines was not deserted and was actually habitable. And according to Morga, it extends up to 12 degrees south latitude. And for Rizal, it is actually at exactly 25 degrees and 40 minutes latitude north until 12 degrees latitude south. Next is climate. According to Morga, winters and summers are opposite of those in Europe. And according to Rizal, in Manila, by December to February, the temperature goes down more than it does during August to September. According to Morga, rainy weather is from June to September. Summer is from October to May. According to Rizal, thus, with regards to the season, it resembles Spain as all the rest of the northern hemisphere. Next is plant species. According to Morga, betel, pickles, and ginger are abundant. And according to Rizal, betel is kasubha in Tagalog. Culture and society. First, body tattoo. According to Morga, they draw pattern first before putting black powder where the blood oozes out. Rizal agreed, it is the same method as the Japanese. Next is indigenous people. According to Morga, tribes of whom cannot be safe because of violence. And according to Rizal, they will always choose violence until the government enters because of their inhumane ways as censors those who do not submit to the friars. Next, lifestyle and moral principles. According to Morga, men and women are money-loving and in capitals, so when there is price, they will. And according to Rizal, we find it everywhere in the world, even in Europe. And according to Morga, bathing their body on rivers or streams regardless of their age. And according to Rizal, Indios have hygienic customs, which is the proper way of taking a bath. Next, government. According to Morga, there are no kings or lords to rule them. Rizal agreed that there were no such kings. Morga was critical of the system of government because there are no rulers for myriad communities, instead one leader for each tribe. Rizal argued that it was better that way because having a leader that knows what the tribe needs and what problems they have is more effective. Foods. According to Morga, they prefer to eat salt fish which begin to decompose and smell. And according to Rizal, it is called bagoong, and all those who have eaten it and tasted it know that it is not old or not to be rotten. And according to Morga, the ordinary food of the natives is very small fish which they call laulau. And according to Rizal, it seems that Morga refers to the willis or dilis which is eaten by natives in large quantities. Faith. First, belief on crocodiles. According to Morga, the natives set traps on the borders of rivers and streams near their settlements to secure them from which they fear and venerate. And according to Rizal, it is just like how other nations have their respect to lions and bears, putting their symbols in their shields and giving them vulnerable epithets. In terms of custom for the dead, according to Morga, they buried their dead in their own houses, keeping their bodies and bone for a long time in boxes and venerating their skulls. Rizal said, "We find it much more natural and pious to venerate the remains of our loved ones than those fanatical martyrs whom we have no dealings and who probably will never remember us."
The main proposition of Rizal's new edition of Morgas Sucesos are: first, that the Filipinos have their own culture civilization before the coming of Spaniard. Second, that the Filipinos are disseminated, demoralized, exploited, and ruined by the Spanish colonization. And last, the present state of the Philippines was not necessarily superior to its past. Finally, when the new edition of Morgas Sucesos, Rizal was able to produce the first history book of the Philippines written for the Filipinos.